Hey everyone, welcome to the Python port scanning tutorial. In this tutorial, we will walk through creating a simple Python port scanner that scans multiple target IP addresses for open ports. This script uses the socket and argparse libraries to enable scanning for multiple ports on multiple hosts, making it a useful tool for network administrators and cybersecurity enthusiasts. So what we will learn in this video, you will learn how to parse command line arguments with argparse to specify target IPs and ports, how to use the socket library to attempt connections to each port on each target IP, how to handle errors and timeouts during the scanning process, and how to interpret the results and identify which ports are open or closed. So I'll give you guys a quick demo of how the final script will look like and its functionalities. So I've created the script. If we run it, the script will take the target IP addresses. In here I have specified 3 IP addresses: 192, 168, 190, 191, and 192. And it will take a range of ports, which in this case I have used 8000, 8001, 8002, then 9000, 9001, and 9002. So if we run this, it will attempt to check whether these ports are open on these IP addresses or not. So in the first section, you can see that on the 192, 168, 190, it was checking for all these 6 ports: 8000, 8001, 8002, 9000, 9001, 9002. So this target IP address of 192, 168, 190, it has 2 ports open, which is 8001 and 8002. And this target, which is 192, 168, 192, it has 1 port open, which is port 9000. This the other IP address, which is 192, 168, 191, it doesn't have any of these ports open. So this is how our script will look like once we are done. So let's get started. The first thing that you have to do is you have to import the socket module. So let's import this. Then we have to specify our target IP address. So we can say target. We create an object. It will hold our IP address. We can say 190. And for the port, we can say, let's say port 8001. Next, we have to create a socket object. So let's create our socket object. Let's type in. So I'll quickly explain what this code in here, what it does. So what is a socket? A socket is an endpoint for sending or receiving data across a computer network. When 2 computers communicate over a network, each uses a socket to send and receive data. A socket is defined by the combination of an IP address and a port number. The socket module in Python provides a way to interact with network protocols. It allows you to create and work with network connections using sockets. The socket.socket in here that we are using, the socket.socket function is used to create a new socket object in Python. This function takes 2 parameters that define the address family and the socket type for the socket that you're creating. Now the first part in here, I'm using AF INET. So the AF INET stands for address family IPv4. It means the socket will communicate using the IPv4 protocol, which is the most common version of the Internet Protocol. If you wanted to use IPv6 addresses instead, you would use AF_INET6 as the address family. This defines the socket type, which specifies the communication method the socket will use. Next, we are using socket.sock_stream. So sock_stream refers to the TCP, Transmission Control Protocol, which is a connection-oriented protocol. It ensures reliable, ordered, and error-checked delivery of data between applications running on hosts in a network. TCP is used for applications that require reliable bidirectional communication, such as web browsers, file transfers, email, etc. In TCP communication, a connection must be established before data can be sent, and data is guaranteed to be delivered in the correct order without loss. If you wanted to use UDP, which stands for User Datagram Protocol instead, which is a connection-less and less reliable protocol, you would use sock underscore dgram instead of sock underscore stream. Next, we have to set a timeout. So let's set the timeout s dot timeout. We will put in 2 here. So the s dot set timeout dot 2, it sets a timeout for the connection attempt. Set timeout is a method provided by the socket object in Python's socket module. It is used to specify a timeout for socket operations, such as connecting to a remote server or receiving data. This method takes a single argument, a timeout value in seconds, which can be a float for fractional seconds or an integer for whole seconds, which in this case we are using an integer 2. If the socket operation like connect, receive, and send, which we'll see later, doesn't complete within the specified timeout period, a socket timeout exception is raised. So next, let's try a try except block, which catches socket errors and prints an appropriate message if there is a problem at the code. So let's create our try except block. So we can say try. Next, we have to create connect. So use the connect X. So connect X. Then we have to specify the target IP and port. So we have already created objects for the target IP and port. So the connect X method that I am using here, the connect X, it's a method of the socket object in Python. It is similar to connect, but with an important difference. So instead of connect X, we can also use connect, but we will be using connect X. So connect will block. It will wait until a connection is established or an error occurs. Connect X, which we are using on the other hand, it does not block in the same way and instead returns an error code, an integer, instead of raising an exception if an error occurs during the connection attempt. The connectX method, instead of raising an exception on error, returns an error code. It is non-blocking and won't raise an exception, making it more convenient when you want to handle errors in a more controlled way without using try except blocks. It returns 0 if the connection is successful, and a non-zero error code if the connection attempt fails. This makes it easier to check the result of a connection attempt and handle it accordingly. So let's see. Let's click an if else statement. So we say if result is equal to 0. Then we want to print port. So we are taking the port from the port object that we created earlier. And then we can say is open on. Then we have to specify the target IP. Else, if our result code is not equal to 0, then we can say print port. The port number is closed on. We have to specify target IP. Next, let's create the except part here. So I can say next, if there is a socket error, then we have to print that as well. So we can say error connecting to, then we have to say target IP, and we have to specify the error. Now the except, why do we need the except block? The purpose of the except keyword is used to define a block of code that will be executed if an exception is raised during the execution of the code instead of the inside the try block. How it works: if an error occurs in the try block, Python will stop executing the remaining code in the try block and will jump to the corresponding except block. If the error matches the type specified in the except clause, the code in the except block will be executed. And if no error occurs in the except block, it is skipped. Now inside the except block, we are using the socket error here. Now except block socket dot error. The purpose of the socket error is that this is a specific exception type that is defined in the socket module. Socket.error is the base class for all exceptions related to socket operations. It is raised when an error occurs during the execution of a socket-related operation, like connecting to a server, sending data, receiving data, etc. Now, common causes, some common scenarios where socket.error might be raised include connection issues, trying to connect to a remote host that is unreachable or refusing connections, or timeouts if a socket operation takes too long and exceeds a set timeout period, or invalid operations, trying to perform socket operations with invalid arguments, for example, trying to bind to an invalid address or port, or maybe resource issues if the system runs out of available sockets or resources. Next, finally, we have to, we can say finally s.close. So if everything goes well, we want to close the socket. So close is a method of the socket object in Python's socket module. It is used to close the socket, releasing any system resources associated with it. Closing a socket is an important step to ensure that no further operations can be performed on that socket and that all the resources like file descriptors or network buffers are properly freed. Why close a socket? So why should we close it? Resource management. This can be one reason. So operating systems, they allocate system resources such as file descriptors to each socket that is created. If a socket is not closed properly, these resources might not be released, potentially causing resource leaks, which could eventually exhaust the available resources, leading to errors or performance issues, or preventing errors. So once a socket is closed, no further communication can be performed on it. For example, you can't send or receive data after closing the socket. This is useful when you're done with network communication and want to ensure that the socket is properly terminated. Graceful shutdown. Closing the socket ensures that any data buffered for transmission is flashed or sent and the connection is terminated gracefully. So this is especially important in client-server communication using protocols like TCP. So after we are done with this, let's see if the script is saved. So let's quickly run this. So we can say Python scan, we can run it. So we get an error, none type object is not callable. So let's quickly look at this. 192.168, what is the error here? So we are defining our port. Next, we are creating our socket, socket.socket, and we are setting the timeout. Inside the try block, we are connecting to the target. Then we are checking for the result. If result is equal to 0, then we are searching for the error connecting to. And finally, so in here we are getting an error. So it says on line 8. So on line 8 is our timeout. Non-type object is not callable. Okay, this is correct. So it's not timeout, it's set timeout. So we have to, I forgot to type in the set, so let's quickly run it again. So in here you can see that on 192, 168, 190, port 8001, it is open. So if we try another port, let's say port number 10,001, and we run this, so if you run it here, you can see that port 10,001, it is closed. So it says port 10,001, it is closed. So this is it for this tutorial, guys. In the next tutorial, I will show you guys how to use the argparse module to take this the target IP address which we want to scan. We want to take it from the command line argument. So we want to pass the target as an argument to the script here. So let's say we want to scan 192, 190. So we want to pass it to the script like this. In the next tutorial, I will show you how to use the argparse module to pass the target IP address to the script. So if you have any questions, put it in the comment section below. And if you found this tutorial useful, please do like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.